You wake in the quiet of middle age and wonder who you've become. The roles you played for decades, parent, partner, worker, caretaker, still define your days, yet something feels different now. The mirror shows lines you didn't notice forming, and the calendar reminds you how fast the years have passed. You ask yourself questions that feel almost forbidden. What do I actually want? Who am I beneath all these obligations? The world told you self-discovery belonged to youth. Wild trips, late-night conversations, reinventing yourself without consequence. But now, in your second half, the search feels heavier, more urgent. There's less time to waste on pretending, yet more fear about what you might find. You sense a truth waiting beneath the surface, something honest and raw that your younger self wasn't ready to face. The noise of ambition has quieted, and in its place, a deeper question emerges. If you stripped away everything you've built, what would remain? The paradox of self-discovery in your second half is this. You know yourself better than ever, yet you feel more lost than you did at 20. Back then, ignorance was bliss. You could try on identities, discard them, start over without consequence. The world felt open, infinite, forgiving. Now, every choice carries weight. You've lived long enough to see the results of your decisions. The career that didn't fulfill you, the relationships that faded, the dreams you abandoned for stability. You carry the evidence of who you've been, and it shapes who you think you can become. Youth promised discovery through exploration. You believed if you just tried enough things, traveled enough places, met enough people, you'd stumble upon your true self. But midlife reveals a different truth. Self-discovery isn't about finding something new. It's about confronting what's always been there, hidden beneath expectations, obligations, and fear. The masks you wore to survive, to belong, to succeed. They've become so familiar, you forgot they were masks at all. Now, as responsibilities shift and time grows shorter, those masks crack. You glimpse the person underneath, and it's terrifying. What if you don't recognize them? What if they want things you can no longer have? The second half demands honesty you weren't capable of before. You can't lie to yourself the way you once did. The stories you told about why you stayed in that job, that marriage, that city, start to unravel. You see patterns, the ways you betrayed yourself for approval, the dreams you buried to avoid disappointment, the parts of your identity you sacrificed to keep the peace. And now, with less energy to pretend, you face a choice. Continue performing the life others expect, or risk everything to discover who you actually are. The paradox deepens because wisdom makes the stakes clearer, yet courage feels harder to summon. You know yourself enough to see the truth, but fear keeps you from living it. Self-discovery in your second half begins not with a grand journey, but with a simple, quiet admission. You don't know yourself as well as you thought. This realization arrives in small moments, standing alone in your kitchen, noticing you've been living on autopilot for years. The routines that once brought comfort now feel like chains. The identity you built so carefully, responsible, dependable, selfless, suddenly feels like someone else's design. You start asking dangerous questions. What do I actually enjoy? What would I choose if no one was watching? Who would I be if I stopped performing? The shift requires stripping away layers. You begin by examining the roles you've played: parent, spouse, employee, caretaker. Each role came with scripts: how to behave, what to prioritize, who to become. You followed those scripts faithfully, believing they would lead to fulfillment. But now, as children grow independent, careers plateau, relationships settle into routine, the scripts feel hollow. You realize you've been playing a part for so long that you've forgotten what authenticity feels like. The work of self-discovery becomes archaeological, digging through years of accumulated expectations to find the person you buried beneath them. You start small. You revisit old interests, the ones you abandoned when life got serious. Maybe it's music, art, writing, gardening, pursuits that once sparked joy but felt frivolous compared to bills and responsibilities. You pick them up tentatively, almost embarrassed by how much they still move you. You remember what it felt like to create something for no reason other than the pleasure of creating. You recall the freedom of doing things badly, without judgment, just for the experience. These small acts of reclamation become revolutionary. They remind you that you're more than your productivity, more than your usefulness to others. The Stoics understood that true self-knowledge requires solitude, not loneliness, but intentional time alone with your thoughts, without distraction or performance. You begin carving out moments of silence, early mornings before the house wakes, evening walks without your phone, drives where you turn off the radio and simply think. In these moments, uncomfortable truths surface. You confront the resentments you've swallowed, the compromises that cost more than you admitted, the parts of yourself you silenced to avoid conflict. You see how much energy you've spent managing others' emotions, maintaining peace, being who they needed you to be. And you wonder, what if you stopped? This questioning feels selfish at first. You've been taught that self-discovery is indulgent, that maturity means putting others first. But the Stoics taught something different. You cannot give what you don't have. If you've lost yourself in service to others, you have nothing authentic left to offer. True generosity requires a self to give from. So you begin the slow work of reclaiming your identity, not by abandoning your responsibilities, but by redefining your relationship to them. You parent not out of obligation, but from genuine love. You work not just for money, but for meaning. You show up in relationships as your full self, not a curated version designed to please. The process is messy. People resist your changes. They liked the old you, the predictable one, the one who always said yes, the one who absorbed their stress without complaint. When you start setting boundaries, expressing needs, choosing yourself, it disrupts the system. Relationships that relied on your self-sacrifice struggle to adapt. Some people leave. Others double down, demanding you return to the role they preferred. This is where courage matters most. You must decide whether to retreat into familiar patterns or continue forward into the unknown territory of authenticity. You discover that self-discovery isn't a destination, it's a practice. Each day, you choose honesty over comfort. You speak truths that make you vulnerable. You admit when you're tired, overwhelmed, uncertain. You stop pretending to have answers you don't have. You let people see your struggles, your doubts, your humanity. This transparency feels risky, but it's also liberating. The exhausting performance ends. The energy you spent maintaining an image becomes available for actual living. You begin rewriting your internal narratives, the stories you told yourself, about why you couldn't change careers, pursue passions, leave situations that drained you, start to sound like excuses. Not because change is easy, but because staying the same has become unbearable. You realize that fear of judgment, failure, and uncertainty kept you trapped longer than circumstance ever did. The second half offers a gift youth couldn't provide: the wisdom to recognize when fear is lying and the courage to act anyway. Self discovery reveals uncomfortable truths about relationships. You see which connections were built on genuine love and which were sustained by convenience, obligation, or fear of loneliness. You realize some friendships were transactional, people who needed your support but rarely offered theirs. Marriages that looked stable from the outside feel hollow when you stop performing contentment. The question becomes, can these relationships evolve to accommodate your authentic self, or must you grieve them and move on? There's no easy answer, but the Stoics remind you, attachment to outcomes causes suffering. You can control your honesty, your effort, your willingness to grow. You cannot control whether others join you. As you shed old identities, space opens for new possibilities. You experiment with who you might become. You try new communities, explore different philosophies, test values you inherited without questioning. You discover that some beliefs you held for decades were never truly yours. They were absorbed from family, culture, religion, without examination. Now you choose consciously. You keep what resonates and release what doesn't. This conscious curation of your inner life becomes an act of self-respect. The shift also involves forgiving yourself. You carry regrets, chances not taken, words left unsaid, years spent in situations that hurt you. Self-discovery requires releasing the fantasy of a perfect past. You cannot undo your choices, but you can understand them with compassion. You were doing the best you could with the awareness you had. The person you were then isn't who you are now. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It frees you to move forward without dragging its weight behind you. You learn to distinguish between who you are and who you've been conditioned to be. Conditioning runs deep. Gender roles, cultural expectations, family dynamics, societal pressures. You internalize messages about success, beauty, worth, and acceptability. Many of those messages were lies designed to make you manageable, profitable, or convenient for systems that didn't care about your well-being. Self-discovery in your second half means identifying those lies and rejecting them. You realize you don't have to be smaller to make others comfortable. You don't have to achieve more to prove your value. You don't have to look a certain way, earn a certain amount, or follow a certain path to deserve love and respect. The Stoic concept of memento mori, remember you will die, takes on new urgency. Time is finite. Every day spent living someone else's version of your life is a day you can't reclaim. This awareness isn't morbid. It's motivating. It cuts through the noise of trivial concerns and focuses your attention on what truly matters. You ask, if I died tomorrow, would I be proud of who I've been today? Would I regret the things I didn't say, the risks I didn't take, the person I didn't become? These questions guide your choices. They give you permission to prioritize joy, connection, authenticity over approval, security, and comfort. Self-discovery also means accepting what you cannot change. Your body ages, your energy wanes, opportunities close. The past is fixed, but within these constraints, freedom still exists. You can choose how you respond to limitation. You can find meaning in the narrow spaces left to you. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. You embrace your reality, not because it's perfect, but because resistance causes more suffering than acceptance. You make peace with the life you've lived and the person you've become, even as you continue to evolve. In your second half, self-discovery feels less like finding yourself and more like coming home. You recognize that the person you've been searching for was there all along, waiting beneath the noise. The work isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing what's false so what's true can emerge. You strip away the masks, the scripts, the performances, and what remains is simpler, quieter, more honest. You discover that you're enough, not because you've achieved or accumulated or perfected, but because you exist. Your worth isn't conditional. It never was. This realization changes everything. When you commit to self-discovery in your second half, the rewards unfold slowly, quietly, but profoundly. The first benefit is clarity. For years you lived in fog, making decisions based on shoulds, suppressing desires that felt impractical, silencing intuition that contradicted logic. Now, as you peel away layers of conditioning, your vision sharpens. You see what truly matters. Relationships that drain you become obvious. Work that misaligns with your values loses its hold. Obligations that served someone else's agenda reveal themselves. This clarity empowers you to make different choices. You stop wasting energy on pretense. You invest in what nourishes you. The result is a life that feels more intentional, more yours. Your relationships transform. When you show up authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Conversations deepen. Superficial connections fall away, making space for genuine intimacy. People who love the real you, flaws, contradictions, uncertainties included, draw closer. Those who preferred the performance drift away. And while this loss stings, it also liberates. You stop performing for approval. You stop twisting yourself into shapes that please others. The relationships that remain are built on truth, not convenience. They sustain you through difficulty because they're rooted in who you actually are, not who you pretended to be. Your marriage, if it survives the disruption of your transformation, becomes richer. When you stop hiding parts of yourself, your partner sees you fully. This vulnerability invites reciprocity. They share their own hidden truths. The relationship evolves from a comfortable routine into a space where both people can grow. Conflicts still arise, but they're navigated with honesty rather than avoidance. You learn to fight fair, to apologize sincerely, to ask for what you need without shame. The connection deepens because it's no longer based on maintaining an image, but on co-creating a life that honors both of you. You gain energy. The exhaustion of pretending, of managing perceptions, of suppressing your authentic self, it drains more than you realize. When you stop performing, that energy returns. You have capacity for things that matter: creativity, connection, rest, joy. You notice you're less reactive, less resentful, less overwhelmed. Problems that once consumed you shrink to manageable size because you're no longer carrying the additional weight of living a lie. You sleep better. You laugh more easily. You feel present in your own life instead of watching it pass from a distance. Self-discovery brings unexpected joy. You reconnect with passions you abandon. You discover new interests that align with who you've become. You give yourself permission to pursue things simply because they bring pleasure, without needing them to be productive or profitable. You read books that challenge you. You take classes that intrigue you. You travel not to check boxes, but to experience wonder. You create art that no one will see, music no one will hear, Words no one will read, and it doesn't matter because the act itself is fulfilling. You remember what it feels like to be curious, playful, alive. Your self-respect returns. For years, you betrayed yourself in small ways, staying silent when you should have spoken, agreeing when you wanted to refuse, accepting treatment you didn't deserve. Each betrayal eroded your self-worth. Now, as you honor your truth, dignity rebuilds. You stand taller. You speak with more confidence. You set boundaries without guilt. You walk away from situations that diminish you. This self-respect radiates outward. People treat you differently because you've signaled that you matter. You attract opportunities aligned with your values because you're no longer willing to compromise them. You become a model for others. Your courage to live authentically gives permission to those around you, your children, your friends, your colleagues, to do the same. You show them that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become more honest. Your transformation ripples outward in ways you may never fully see, but the impact is real. People watch how you navigate this shift, and some of them find their own courage in your example. Your relationship with time changes. The urgency that once drove you, achieve more, accumulate more, prove more, fades. You realize that time is finite, yes, but that makes each moment more precious, not less. You stop rushing. You savor experiences. You choose presence over productivity. You let conversations linger. You watch sunsets without checking your phone. You notice details, the way light filters through leaves, the sound of rain, the texture of someone's laughter. Life becomes richer, not because you're doing more, but because you're experiencing more deeply. You discover resilience you didn't know you had. Self-discovery demands facing fears, rejection, judgment, uncertainty, loss. Each time you act despite fear, you prove to yourself that you can handle what comes. This builds confidence that extends beyond self-discovery into every area of life. Challenges still arise, but they don't destabilize you the way they once did. You trust yourself to adapt, to endure, to find a way forward. This resilience becomes one of your greatest assets. Perhaps most importantly, you find peace, not the absence of struggle, but a deeper acceptance of yourself and your life. You stop fighting reality. You release the fantasy of who you should have been and embrace who you are. You forgive yourself for being human, imperfect, inconsistent, still learning. This peace doesn't mean complacency. You continue to grow, to change, to strive. But the striving comes from a place of wholeness rather than lack. You're no longer trying to fix yourself or prove your worth. You're simply becoming more of who you already are. The benefits of self-discovery in your second half aren't flashy or immediate. They accumulate quietly over time, like compound interest on a long-held investment. But they're real. They change the texture of your days, the quality of your relationships, the depth of your experience. You become more honest, more present, more alive. And in a world that encourages performance and pretense, that kind of authenticity is revolutionary. The truth about self-discovery in your second half is this: it's not about finding yourself. It's about having the courage to be yourself. All along, beneath the roles and routines and expectations, you were there, waiting. The person you've been searching for never left. They just got buried under years of trying to fit in, to succeed, to survive. Now, with time pressing forward and energy growing precious, the invitation arrives. Stop performing and start living. This isn't easy work. Self-discovery demands honesty that terrifies you. It requires confronting the ways you've betrayed yourself, the dreams you've abandoned, the parts of your identity you've hidden to keep the peace. It asks you to risk everything you've built: security, approval, familiarity, for something less certain but infinitely more real: authenticity. The world will resist your transformation. People will miss the old you, the predictable one, the one who never rocked the boat. But their comfort cannot be your compass. You've spent decades prioritizing others. This chapter is yours. You don't have to blow up your life to discover yourself. You don't need to quit your job, leave your marriage, or move across the country, though some of you might. For most, self-discovery happens in smaller, quieter ways. Saying no when you mean no, pursuing a hobby that brings joy, speaking a truth that scares you, setting a boundary that protects your peace. Each small act of authenticity builds momentum. Over time, these choices compound into a life that feels genuinely yours. The second half offers what youth couldn't: wisdom earned through experience, clarity forged in difficulty, and the understanding that time is too precious to waste on pretense. You know yourself now in ways you didn't at 20. You've seen what happens when you compromise your values, ignore your intuition, sacrifice your needs. You carry scars from those lessons, but also the strength that comes from surviving them. This knowledge is power. Use it. Self-discovery doesn't guarantee happiness. It doesn't solve all your problems or erase your regrets, but it offers something more valuable: the possibility of living honestly, of looking in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back, of building relationships based on truth rather than performance, of spending your remaining years aligned with who you actually are, not who you thought you should be. That alignment between your inner truth and your outer life is where peace lives. You may discover things about yourself that surprise you, desires you didn't know you had, strengths you never claimed, limitations you've been denying, parts of your identity that contradict the story you've told yourself for decades. This dissonance is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Growth happens in the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. Don't rush through it. Sit with the uncertainty. Let yourself be unsettled. Transformation isn't neat or linear. It's messy, contradictory, and profoundly human. As you move forward, remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your evolution. You don't need permission to change, to grow, to become more yourself. The people who love you will adjust. The ones who don't were never really seeing you anyway. And the opinion that matters most, yours, will shift from self-judgment to self-compassion as you practice this new way of living. The truth about self-discovery in your second half is that it's never too late. The narrative that says you missed your chance, that you're too old to change, that you should accept who you've become and stop reaching for more, it's a lie designed to keep you small. You have years left, decades maybe. How will you spend them? Continuing the performance or finally stepping into your own life? The choice is yours. It always has been. And the person you discover when you finally have the courage to look, flawed, complex, imperfect, real, is worth knowing. They've been waiting for you. Welcome home.